Hello, welcome back to Her Shift, the podcast which is all about shifting and healing and thriving. And we've got a really exciting episode because guess what? It's my 50th. No, not me. It's the 50th episode of Her Shift. We got there. I got there. I am very proud of my techie self. And to celebrate this episode, I have got the incredible, the very lovely, the very amazing, very talented Miss Heather Hendrie. As you can remember, she was our most amazing guest for the most popular episode on Her Shift when we talked all about periods, PMDD, and all that shiz. You loved it. I loved talking to her. Here she is. Hi, Heather.
Hey, everyone. I'm so excited I get to be here for your 50th, Anna. And I see that balloon bouncing in the background.
I'm going to pop this away now because it's going to bash me in the head.
Wow, 50 episodes strong. What an honor to be here. So excited to talk with you again about all the things.
Wasn't like the timing just aligned, I'm thinking, as well?
Yeah, the timing couldn't be better. And I'm really noticing the conversation, the shift that's happening around premenstrual disorders, premenstrual experience, perimenopause, menopause, all of it's happening. And in fact, so much so that, of course, when I reached out to you, I had to share my good news that I've just gotten a book deal for my book, which is coming out in March of this next year. So
that is amazing. I remember that you told me, and I was like, I'm just so happy because, it does all that, work and effort, and it's been seen. And I'm like, how does it feel?
I'm so delighted. It's hard to believe, to be honest, but I think the thing that makes me feel most excited is that I'm riding this wave of greater attention finally being paid to the health of folks with a uterus. And it feels very much like it's time that this story couldn't have happened sooner. For me personally, it's a little bit overwhelming and exciting. And now there are all the nerves and questions around, I really hope I can honor this important subject and honor the readers with my best work, which of course is what I plan to bring forward. But yeah, delighted. The book's going to be coming out with Caitlin Press, which is a Canadian publisher here, early in the new year. And it's actually already up and available for pre-sale. So over here on this end, I'm in hardcore writing, editing, finalizing, tell the story mode.
Yeah, I must admit, while I know a lot of us have dreams and aspirations of getting our work published, I do work with women and people in general who have done such. And it is like a very hardcore time of their life. And, and it's not just like writing the book, is it? It's like, everything that comes with it and the press and the marketing. And you make sure you look after yourself because this is going to be.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, and there's something unique, and I've really noticed this with our awfully hilarious writers who are sharing memoir essays. They're true stories and experiences that they've lived. There's another level of experience that happens as you begin to get vulnerable and share that openly in the world. And this is why I feel so lucky to be able to share this news kind of publicly, really here for the first time with you and your followers, Anna, is to be held and to have this work midwifed into the world and held by a community of other menstruating folks who are eager and supportive for this work, because inevitably when you bring something into the world, some people will like it, some won't. So this feels like a very nourishing, welcoming, beautiful way to announce this news. So thank you.
Well, I hope you're going to do lots of celebratory, I would say parties and stages, because you have your pre-sale and then you have your launch, and I hope you're going to do audio, Heather.
I really would love to do audio. Actually, the audiobook just came out for Awfully Hilarious Period Pieces, and I have read those stories over and over, of course, as we were preparing that book for publication, but this is the first time I've listened to the storytellers tell the story in their own words. We did something unique. Each of the writers told the story themselves. Generally with an audiobook, it's narrated just by one person, or there's a narrator who's hired, who's just generally very good at telling stories. But in this case, hearing the writers tell their stories has been so powerful and potent. And so that does feel like a next level challenge for me, should I be up for it, is it would be really great to tell the story, and ideally if I could narrate it myself, but we'll see if I'm up for that in the new year. We'll see, to be determined.
I find it because I only really do audiobooks, as I've said, I do tend to judge, you can get like a sample to download just to see if you can be into it. And I tell you what, I am so more likely to get it if the author narrates it.
And are you?
Yeah, because it just, to me, it's like them. Whereas, sometimes they'll obviously have a paid voice actor, and it sounds lovely, but they don't know the meaning or the intent. They don't have the energy of the story. Do they care?
That's so interesting. I hear you on that. And it's interesting because I think I've inadvertently done the same thing. When it's nonfiction or memoir, I really do like to hear that story in the
Yeah.
person's voice. Fiction is beautiful. There's
Yeah.
some amazing actors, voice actors who do such a beautiful job. But it's interesting because when I was first looking at doing an audiobook for the Awfully Hilarious series, the cheapest, most accessible, available way to do it was AI narration. And I absolutely don't want to touch on that when it comes to real people's true stories. But it turns out to be quite a bit more expensive and complicated to have real people tell their stories. But those are barriers I'm really willing to do the work to overcome, because I'm with you. It's really important, I think, to be able to, if we feel comfortable, to be able to share our stories in our own voice.
Yeah. No, I think it just, it's like I don't know, I wouldn't say judge it, but I just know that I've noticed I'm so much more likely to get into something non-fiction, like you say.
Yeah.
So, and I love to hear just the real feel behind someone's voice and in the moment. And also I think when they're reading their own work, and it will be often for the first time, they're almost a bit like, oh, right, did I say that? And I just like hearing those nuances. I was going to say, so since I last saw you, I got invited to go to, it was called the PMDD Hub, and it was like a community get-together venture in the northeast of England. And it really surprised me. So I just it was posted in one tiny PMDD forum, one post, that was it. And there was only a few people there, and the person that was running it was actually a male dentist whose wife had suffered from it, and she'd had to have a full hysterectomy. And and he was doing it from the partner's perspective, and he wanted to also create a partner support group for PMDD. There was also a PhD doctor who was doing her own studies because obviously there aren't any, on PMDD, and raising all the questions, and she was doing subject groups, and it was really interesting that she made it very, what's the word, like, even though she is obviously clever, but I could understand it. It was very accessible to understand. But what was interesting was there just was no promotion for this group. There was like one post, and I'm thinking it was such a lovely, small, safe space, and there was cake. And
You're talking. There was cake. Bring back that balloon.
and I'm like, so I'm thinking, why was it not put out there? Were people being a bit tentative? Did he feel like, well, someone's got to do this, someone's got to champion it, but I'm a man, I'm a male. Should I be doing it? It just seemed a little bit, I wouldn't say shame heavy, but there was something underlying there, But it raised a lot of questions. And one of the things that I took from it when she was doing these test studies was, is it, being around certain people, certain energies that exasperate our hormones or our feelings that cause our PMDD symptoms? Or is it the fact our bodies are going, not good, that person, that they're not causing it, our PMDD symptoms is bringing out the worst in them, and it's like acting like a warning flag. And I just thought, I never viewed it like that. I just viewed it as always like, when I was married, I thought it's all my fault, like every round has died by this, every issue. So it just changed the perspective, and it brought a lot of like partner questions into it.
Sort of the relational aspects of PMDD, the boundaries. It's really interesting. This seems to be a topic that's very relevant right now. The IAPMD, International Association for Premenstrual Disorders, just, I think even this past week, did a really interesting talk on boundaries and PMDD. And something I think about a lot working in this realm, but personally having PMDD, but also working as a therapist, is I don't know anyone who has PMDD, and this is just my personal experience, but I don't know anyone with PMDD who isn't a very, very sensitive person. And PMDD, of course, causes a real challenge in terms of regulating the nervous system. So if we combine that sensitivity plus challenge regulating the nervous system, boundaries can be really, really, really hard to hold and enforce, because we've got sort of this perfect storm of sometimes needing to co-regulate with others, which can challenge boundaries depending on who we choose to do that with. And then that sensitivity, where I think we talked about this actually in our last conversation, Anna, around how at certain times of the cycle, folks with PMDD, or they think with folks with ADHD, have this ability to determine facial expressions more clearly than other people might, in particular those expressions that we might perceive as judgment or disgust. And so that ability to hyper perceive from another can also lead to a lot of feelings of rejection or heightened sensitivity that then we have to find ways to navigate that and what to do with that. So when it comes to relationship, there's a lot there in the room. I really like the couple who've done this beautiful book, and they've created the organization Hope PMDD, really around PMDD and partnership and how it shows up in partnership, have been really helpful. I think the work that they're doing is really important. And then there are folks locally I've been in touch with. They're called the PMDD Wave Riders, working on an app and talking about how we navigate this in relationship. Because first, I think the big question is our relationship to ourselves, how we hold ourselves, what's our relationship between us and the PMDD, which is something I've spoken a lot about in my initial essays on PMDD, and my experience with it is how to go from fury and dismay and grief at this, this through the reproductive cycle, this lifelong experience of the ups and downs, how to come to terms with that, but then how we then begin to relate to others. And I'm curious how you navigate that now. For me and my partnership now, actually, one of the very first things that we had to navigate as a couple was I was finally getting in for my diagnostic process with a psychiatrist in Ontario in Canada. And I write about this in my upcoming book. I had to actually lie to get in there, but I needed years worth of tracking data. And I had boxes and boxes of these papers everywhere, and I was so overwhelmed by it. And my partner sat down next to me and helped me find the monthly trackers and work through that. And that was really pivotal for us in our relationship. Not only that, but that inspired us then to start mapping out. You've spoken about this with your mother-in-law, for example, but it's inspired me to start mapping out on a visible calendar in our shared public space when my cycles were, when the anticipated challenging days might be, so that we could work through it together. But that required me to have an awareness of what was going on, and then a partnership with somebody who was also really willing to compassionately work through the patterns with me. So I'm curious where you find yourself with that too. I think you're naming something very, very important in this whole conversation.
Yeah, so I think it was like from listening to this doctor and her presentation, it was very stats like, of course. But from that, I like to then take it and get emotive and go, right, how can I apply that to my real life? Because it dissected relationships into money, sex, career, lifestyle, home life, all these different parts of a relationship, and it did a good broad range as well. Like it had lots of apparently it was like different ethnic groups, different ages, heterosexual, bi, gay, everything in between. There was like a real mix, but of course there had to be one person had to be menstruating, of course, for it to work. And the interesting thing was the love apparently for that person throughout these the experiments, test subjects. I don't know how they gather this, but they said that never really changed. But the impact on those different factors within their relationship really did, and exasperated them. And I know that in relationships, like money can be a big hot topic and can cause a lot of problems in relationships. It's something that people find really hard to talk about, isn't it? So if you take that and you chuck in a bit of PMDD, that apparently was one of the things that was blowing the roof off. I do find, so from when I was married and I'd met my then husband when I was very young, I was a different person. And I didn't know myself, and I didn't know, I didn't know about PMDD. I didn't know what it was. But I now look back and I go, it was nothing to do with the PMDD. In fact, I love that part of myself now, because it was a case of, you know what, if you're not going to take the time to love me at
Hmm.
my fabulous, you are not going to be able to handle me at my worst, and you don't
Yeah.
deserve to.
Yeah.
Now, it's like my partner, it was something that I did hide from him for a while. Well, I didn't deliberately hide, but I just didn't talk about it. And I would just really try to hide my prickly side. But I know
Hmm.
that when there was a few issues going on and I would snap, let's say, I got a little bit more irritable, his way of handling that, as in not taking it personally, not being afraid. I used to call it to stroke the tiger,
Hmm.
very brave. Whereas in my marriage, he would run for the hills, and he would also
Mm.
act repulsed by me as well,
Oh,
which
I'm
then
sorry, Anna.
I think exasperated my
Yeah.
symptoms. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's like going, no, you're just an
No.
oversensitive little demon, aren't you? But you're cute, so it's fine.
Well, Anna, as you speak to this, I'm so glad that you're having an experience now of greater compassion in relationship. I feel so grateful for that myself too. And I'm able to be more compassionate in relationship too, now that I even understand what's going on. But I think this is something that extends beyond PMDD, perhaps to the experience of many other menstruating people, is this late luteal phase wisdom where, things might get harder and we might find ourselves like craving carbs, all the things that are happening based on the real physiological changes happening, which are just on a whole other level with PMDD. But PMS in general as well, I often think about this phase of wisdom where we might just, the challenges that are there become very, very obvious. It's like as a pond stills, you can see the rocks underneath, or you can see the piranhas under the water. But I also really now go forward with myself and my clients, just cautioning that that late luteal is not the time to act, but that is a time of wisdom and enhanced perception. And then maybe a week later, when we've got the capacity or the wave power, really harnessing that wave power, as the period queen speaks about in Australia. I love her work, Lucy Peach. But that we get to then a week later or on day 6 or 7 of our cycle start to then have the conversations or address our finances or sex or all the other taboo topics. But that the clarity often really comes, at least for me and for many of the people I work with, before the bleed. And that's not always the case, of course, if we're talking about real dysregulation in the nervous system. That's when things can present as a massive problem or an amplified problem that really aren't necessarily a major issue in the day-to-day functioning of the relationship. But that as we start to really engage into those waves and that flow of our own cycle and cyclical living, that we can start to understand when we have strengths in different areas and then to really harness that. I know they do a lot of great work with that through Wild Power and Red School as well. But I think it's just sometimes so extreme with PMDD, it can be hard not to see something that as the source of distress and explode and try to address it in the moment when we just don't have the capacity to do so. That, of course, can be really distressing on our relationships. And you'll see as I speak about this in my upcoming book, is that those were the moments where I ended a lot of friendships, partnerships, huge fights with family. That I've since learning why that was happening.
Yeah, and I think that while knowledge won't obviously be an immediate fix, it certainly for me gives me knowing, it gives me power. Like I said, I use that Stardust app where I can see where I
Mm-hmm.
am to do with the moon. So then I go, oh, right, this is what you're telling me. And I'd like to be honest, and we spoke just before I came on. So the reason I'm a week late with this episode is because I've been a bit poorly. I'm going to be honest as well. I'm in proper luteal phase as well. So I'm just, and I think I said to you, Heather, it's just really important, isn't it, to show up and say, look, we can't always be, what if I could record every episode just before ovulation, I'd be on fire, wouldn't I? But that's not going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just really important to go, okay, what can I
Mm-hmm.
take from that? And I love the fact when you said, to take this wisdom. It doesn't feel like wisdom sometimes.
Yeah.
It's me looking at the sky and give me strength,
Yes.
But I absolutely I understand what you mean, and it's like a very I now look at it as intuition. Before I used to call it like it used to feel like raw, really oversensitive raw
Yes.
energy. But now I think no, actually, if that person annoys you at
Hmm.
different points in your
Hmm.
cycle, they they could, that
Yeah.
is what is that saying? What is how that person impacts your nervous system absolutely fascinates me, and it's just made me realize there are some people I should not be around ever.
Yeah. This is something I'm learning with age and maturity. And for the most part, when I'm speaking about that wisdom, I'm talking about treated, well managed PMDD. With untreated PMDD, for me, it was like raw, explosive, at times dangerous. And we know that with PMDD, it can be very dangerous, right? So when we're treated and start to understand our cycles, and like you're acknowledging, like, I'm so sorry to hear you've been poorly, and you're acknowledging where you are and recognizing being here in late luteal. Actually, I should just share the title of my upcoming book. It's going to be called Where the F is My Red Tent. Because this is really what it's about, is how do we hold one another when we are poorly, when we're not well, or when we're late luteal moving towards bleeding and we don't have the capacity we normally have. Where do we go when we need to be held? How do we hold one another? And these are sort of the questions that I'm asking in my book, is that there's stories from my life that I've had the great privilege, because I work with clients, to start to identify where experiences are a little bit more universal. So I specifically highlight more universal experiences like challenges with relationship, disordered eating, body image, PMDD, limerence and sex and addiction hopping. I'm addressing those things through the experience of my own life, because that's what I know. But the book is not about me at all. I'm using the stories of my life to leave breadcrumbs or shine a light along the way that others might follow. And ultimately, ideally, there's also a lot of advocacy in there, that we're looking for systems change. We want the studies for that to happen, that menstruating people be as equally supported as non-menstruating folks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But everything that you're speaking to here, Anna, again, I just want to leap through the camera here and give you a hug and say, come on in, curl up here in my red tent, because I hear that you're in late luteal. I'm moving towards ovulation, and over here I've got tea and a blanket, and I know what it's like on the other side, and I'm here to hold you. It's that you're not alone in that, even though in those moments it's so hard to remember that we aren't alone, that we've got a community, and that a week from now things might feel very, very different.
Absolutely. And it's just made me think about it's so hard sometimes to see past that when you're saying, oh, in a few days or a week, but when you're in the thick of it, you're going, no, it will never happen. I will
Yeah.
never get
Yeah.
there. I'm never going to get my period. Um, I don't know about you. I find literally the minute I bleed, I'm a different person. I
Yeah.
am just like, it's like, oh, hello, I'm back,
Yeah,
back in the room.
I'm the same. And that,
Yeah.
of course, we know that's the diagnostic criteria for PMDD. Within 2 days of bleeding, you feel like yourself again, symptoms go away. But Anna, I'm the same. It's instantaneous. Like the minute, and it actually even happens sometimes a bit before. I'll just suddenly feel, oh, okay, here I am again. And then I go to the bathroom and I notice I'm
Yeah.
bleeding. So it
Yeah.
sometimes happens even just before, but it's right away.
Yeah, and I know it's like not the same for everyone, but that's always just blown my mind. Like
Yes.
that difference. I was just thinking as well how I've always had, certain times really tricky jobs to do around so luteal or when I'm really not feeling it. And I'll say so I still do work in beauty occasionally, and I'm working with someone recently for their wedding and planning their whole
Mm.
look for their day. And the only time they could see me was early last week. And that was
Oh.
when I was just, I felt like death. And I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And I'm thinking, this is not like getting on a plane and doing an 18-hour like red eye. This is fine. We can do this. It's like 3 hours in the salon. I can do this. Oh dear God. And I always felt like I was having an outer body experience, as
Hmm.
in I
Hmm.
became like robotic. I was communicating with her, I was picking up on her energy. It was really interesting. But I also felt so vulnerable. I felt, is she picking up on mine? Can she see?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
I mean, I was like, this has brought on hormonal symptoms. Like, I was hot flushing, I was sweating, I was going, oh, it's a bit hot in here, isn't it? And I'm going, oh no,
mm,
it's fine. I was like, I'm just going to open the window. Oh no, don't. It's too cold. After I probably spent maybe 2.5 hours on my feet, I felt like I'd walked for 8 hours. I was like,
mm,
I was just trying to do this like really professional job. And I look back
mhm,
and go, how are we capable of doing that? How did my body manage to do that? How did I hold it together? Afterwards, she was so pleased. She sent me a really nice message. She said, oh, it was so lovely to meet you. Thank you for being so understanding. I felt like I wasn't even there. I was not
mhm,
actually in the room with you. And I'm like, what is going on with our
mhm,
bodies, in our minds in those
mhm,
moments?
mhm.
What is
Yeah.
it? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? And it's physiological. I used to describe it in those moments where you're talking, and you dug deep and you made your way through, and you're practiced enough and competent enough in your area of genius that you could deliver 3 hours, even sleepwalking. But I used to talk in those moments of feeling as though I'm moving through the world almost without skin on, that things are just too raw, like everything, a slight change in temperature, a slight shift in somebody's tone of voice, missing a meal just by 20 minutes. I just had so little tolerance for it. It's very much different now that I'm well and in a treated place with the PMDD, now that I know what it is, how to take care of myself. But I'm with you. There are still some cycles where it's really hard. And what I play with now is just catching myself sooner and caring for myself sooner and getting myself held and my needs met sooner. So for example, like in your case, after those 3 hours, I hope you were able to go home and have a bath and just, take care of yourself for the next. Isn't it hard? It's so much easier to have someone else remind us. I see that look on your face.
Well, so I had the kids, and I think you might have seen, I posted in my stories, my son had written like a love note. It was affirmations. It said like, you are strong, you are brave, you are
Mm,
confident, you are my mom. And I said, because I got home and he was hard work. He was hard work last week. He's only 8. And he's going through a lot right now. But then he presented me with that. I'm like, okay,
oh,
you
Anna.
get it. You see it. You see it.
But do you know what? Thanks for saying that, because I'm speaking from a point of privilege here where I don't have children. And so PMDD as a mother, and I know for many people, actually, PMDD is triggered with childbirth. Like hormonal changes can make that show up for people. I'm just so curious for you how you navigate. There's days where I'm sure you don't have the capacity and you've got to just dig deep and show up.
It's a funny one because I harbored for a long time a lot of resentment because I didn't enjoy both my pregnancies. There was 8 years between them. So I was 27 when I was pregnant with my daughter, 35 when I had my son. And that's a big, like, I was technically geriatric when I had my son. That's
Mm,
what they class you as. But people got, I loved it. I was there. I was like, no, hated it. Absolutely hated it. I felt hungover every day throughout my
mm,
entire pregnancy. I was an angry hormonal pregnant woman.
mm,
Everything irritated me. Everyone irritated me.
mm,
Had depression as well. I was probably better once I'd had both babies from that period afterwards. But then I was so resentful because I had to go straight back to work with both babies. I didn't get to
mm,
be in that little bubble. Um, and I think that my PMDD was so bad around those years. Like, I completely missed out on my daughter's early years. I was so disconnected. That
mhm.
raw feeling that we talk about, like no skin on. I was like that
Yeah.
all the time. And you say, oh, but I never yelled at her. Um, I never got angry. Um, it was, she was fed, watered, she had a lovely little life, and she had her activities, and she had friends, and she had sleepovers. But I was in a different zone. I was disconnected from it.
Mhm,
I couldn't be connected to her in that way. And
mhm.
I even say to her now, if you wouldn't mind having grandchildren for me in the future, that would be great. So I
Mm,
get to do it again. My son a little bit more so, because obviously around that time I was able to then look at PMDD, look at my symptoms, take action, take your power back, and enjoy it. But I look back at, I don't know how. I honestly don't. I don't know how. I suppose I'm so lucky. I'm in this privileged country. We've got our healthcare. Um, you know, got a nice house, plenty of food, so it's okay, so I can't complain. But I honestly don't know how, when I look back at some of the situations and some
Yeah.
of the ways I felt, how I did do it. I don't
No,
know.
but what I really hear as you're talking about that, and this is a common story I hear from clients also, and I really appreciate you saying this, is that sense of being feeling robotic, like not being able to feel joy, but still that you manage to do what need to be done and feed the children, and yet you really felt not present to the experience. And
Yeah.
that's something I'm familiar with and hear a lot as well, is how we're able to do the thing. So there's a way where a lot of people with PMDD are functioning looks to be quite high functioning, but there's this invisible suffering happening on the inside where that raw feeling and the ups and downs are very often invisible to onlookers. And that's where I think about more and more, like my great conversations with Sophie Krupp and the ADHD cycle, the idea that it's possible that PMDD be categorized as dynamic disability, but also invisible dynamic disability, in that from the outside, last week it might have been really hard for you, but you showed up, your client was pleased with the work that you did, but it took so much out of you and the cost was so high. And
Yeah.
so that's something I find very interesting about PMDD. And I think part of why there's so much more societally and because of the condition itself, but part of why it took me 30 years to get diagnosed, despite being the daughter of a doctor and despite my parents recognizing something was wrong with my very first period, and despite a lot of effort, is that this, in a lot of ways, this can be invisible. And you've been able to mask it really well. And this is something new research I'm seeing is suggesting that potentially at least, if not more than 30% of people with PMDD also have ADHD. We talked a bit last time when we spoke about neurodivergence, but that masking is a big part of that experience of pretending as if things are okay and keeping a smile on. I remember in high school, I got nicknamed Happy Heather Hendrie. And meanwhile, I was suffering so deeply inside. That was one of my most unwell times. I was in the throes of a very serious eating disorder, and yet I kept this smile on my face. And I think that's both a skill and it also an incredible disservice that it does us, that we're hiding. There's an incongruence there and an inauthenticity where we're trying to function and look okay when we're really not.
I think, and in doing that, we're doing a massive disservice not only to ourselves but to everyone. But I thinking it's
Right.
seems to be so prevalent. I'm just thinking back now, and I'd have to say by having my daughter as well, and she's nearly 17. And now at every point I think there's no way I would want her to ever feel like so bad, be in so much mental
No.
pain. Like I just remember what was considered the peak of my career in the beauty industry, and I think it was backstage at a fashion event, and it was, I mean, yes, it was pretentious, looking back and all that, but it was like, for my age, it was really cool, and it was all the famous models and people there. And I was in so much pain inside and so unhappy. And I remember just thinking, I really hope there was like this metal spatula on the side near one of the makeup stations. I was like, God, I really hope I fall on that, and I hope it finishes me off. And then
Oh, Anna.
I remember thinking that. And then,
I want to just pause with that for a second. Just, I really want to acknowledge the depths of the suffering. I, I just want to hold that past you, who's at the peak of her career and yet thinking it would actually be better to die. And that's something where I feel, I'm going to cry, but I feel so, this is meant to be celebratory, and we're celebrating my book launch and your 50th episode, but also there's so much of a disaster around PMDD that people are dying, menstruating people are dying because they would rather suicide than carry on with these untreated symptoms. And that's where I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing. For our listeners, if you're feeling these things, you're not alone. It's not normal to feel that way. Please walk straight into an emergency room for help. If that's where you're at, something is wrong. And
yeah.
I want to hand the floor back to you, Anna, but I just didn't want to let that go. That experience is common with PMDD and it's not normal. And I'm so sorry you felt that.
I think though, and I'm sure you can relate, Heather, it's not one off. It's common, and it's a
It's
lot.
common.
And to the point where as well, I didn't view it like that for a long time. I just viewed it as another massive failing on
Yeah.
my part. Like, look at everyone around me who is,
Yeah.
in my mind, perfect and doing amazing and happy. and I can't hack it
Right.
and I can't handle it. And not only that, look at this privilege, look at this opportunity that I
Yes.
am, you know. And I just remember and talk about the masking, and maybe that's why I used to do it, because I know that one thing that could really help me mask was to put a full face of makeup on, to do the hair, to put the outfit on, to go to an event like that. And I would completely step out of myself. And that was a
Hmm.
coping mechanism in itself. And I would hold it together and I would be, you know, I would
Hmm.
be holding, and
Hmm.
my jaw would ache by the end of, something like that. But I really saw it as just an even worse flaw in myself, the fact that I
Mm.
was feeling like that, and all the time as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I just felt like, and there's no way I can't do it because I'm letting people down. And I just want, yeah, to really put that out there, that ain't normal. That is not
No.
normal. It's not
And
good.
we need to talk about this, because this is really about brain chemistry being out of whack. There's a lot now we know that we can do, but again, this is why I think my book is going to be the first book in Canada written about premenstrual dysphoric disorder from a personal lens, and particularly from the lens of my personal experience and that of a psychotherapist. But it's so important that we talk about it, because it's my belief it's probably one of the most fatal conditions right now in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, because we know that over 30% of people are experiencing this sort of suicidal ideation, which again is physiological. There is something that can be done and addressed. And it's the masking is all the more dangerous because we get missed, right? We get missed. This is for years. And the beauty that comes out of it, you're excellent. You've really done so well in the beauty industry. And I've done so well in different aspects of my career, part of which is because of some of the survival strategies I've developed. But how much better and more easeful if we can create a world for your daughter, for my nieces, for all the young menstruating people that we love, where they don't have to keep it a secret, don't have to hide it. And I'm seeing that already. I'm seeing that already, that people are able to speak more openly. So I think a lot of what we're speaking to here, Anna, is also the folks, those of us in our 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond, who've grown up in even more under the thumb of patriarchal culture. And this is something we spoke about too, but especially beyond the privileged countries that we live in and speak from right now, what this looks like in different parts of the world. But and it's so interesting because, again, here we are to celebrate a book launch and your 50th podcast. And there's a lot of grief here. There's a lot of pain here. There's a lot that still has to be done. But it brings to mind one of my favorite poems that speaks to, we must risk delight, that even as there is pain, we must risk delight. Like in this poem, they speak to the fact that there are women in cages in Calcutta, and still people are laughing, and we have to.
I,
And then part of this is PMDD, but part of this is the human experience. Is grief and pain. There are wars unfolding right now, and the laughter and the joy is still necessary.
I did. She did. I was so brave enough, but like, with my last episode, it was the Angel of Death theory, and I do the whole reverse engineering. So I know they say you shouldn't do that. You should only look at positives. But what I do to feel grateful and to make myself really get a
Hmm.
perspective is to go, right. So, like I came back from that job the other day, and I was absolutely, but I'm not carrying my kids across a war zone. I'm not have to worry about giving them
Hmm.
something to eat. I'm
Hmm.
not. It's just, and it's like, oh, the other day, like the boiler packed up. I'm going, oh, what a problem to have. The fact that I've got running water at my convenience, hot water when
Hmm.
things like that. So I really do go down that route to really understand it and go, and yes, the female experience, the menstruating experience happens across across the board throughout.
Yes.
And I see them. We have this I think it's called a period poverty campaign in the UK,
Yes.
and it's like, imagine you've lost everything, you've lost your home, you're a refugee walking across, and then you get your period
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go, yeah, it's
Well,
a
and this topic's really important. I mean, I'm brought to Martin Luther King. I'll quote, "Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere." So we happen to be talking about PMDD and periods and patriarchy, and people are dying. There are active genocides taking place right now. We're all too aware of it. And I think what you're speaking of is there's a lot of grace and generosity and compassion available in that path, as we both feel gratitude and honor what it is that we do have, and share what we can. because there will always be people, thriving, and there will always be people just on the brink of survival, or not, where what does a life of service look like? What does it look like in my corner, in my life, to honor others? And what are the battles I am best equipped to fight? Or what is the love I am best, I'd say it much better. What is the love I'm best fit to offer right now? Where can I shine brighter? Where can I love more? And in those moments of pain, we might not be able to do it. Last week might not have been the moment where you can shine brightly. That's where you receive that loving note from your son. What could be more beautiful? And then the following day you wake up to shine again. And for me, that's 2 weeks a month after I start bleeding. Okay, let me shine bright there, and then I might need to hibernate for a couple weeks. But
Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful practice, actually, that you have. And um, yeah, I think it can bring us a lot. There's a lot of research too around savoring the good moments that can speak to what it is that I don't have to contend with, and how I might offer more grace to those who are navigating something that I don't understand, or I'm not contending with in this moment.
Absolutely. And I always make a point of, and this is where a lot of people message me and they'll like go, but I've not experienced this and I've not gone through this and I know I shouldn't be complaining. And straight away I'm like, please do not compare your traumas. Please
No.
do not.
No, it,
Don't.
it, it never helps to create a hierarchy of pain. This is not helpful. What we want to offer is, if you're in pain, I hold your hand. If I'm in pain, you hold mine. Vice versa, that we can always find somebody who is worse off. And given that we're able to be here and clothed and have a meal and a bed, we are better off than the vast majority of people in the world right now. And so how do we use this privilege to make change where we can?
Yeah, it just made me think then actually. It's a real thing and I think we do it, don't we? Especially as women, is that hierarchy and that comparison. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I've not suffered as much as you. And um so my dad passed when I was 15, and I've noticed that so now at the age where people are starting to lose their parents, and they won't come to me. They won't
Mm,
talk to me about it because they don't feel they can, because they go, well, why should I come? You lost your dad when you were a kid. And I'll go, what do you think I'm going to say to you? I can understand, I can be there. And I'm
mm,
not going to compare my loss to yours. And I find that really interesting that people go, well, that person suffered more than me, I think. So therefore have no right to ask that person to hold me, to
right.
see me, to hold space, and I just think, why do we do that, especially
So
as
Anna,
women?
that's really potent. What advice would you, I think you're speaking from experience and wisdom here. What advice would you have to offer people who are going through a loss, grieving, given what you've experienced? That they don't need to hero you and protect you. Like, how, I'm just curious what you would say to a friend, what advice you have to offer.
I think that you've got to realize that, so with loss and grief in general, it's a really personal thing. It's about you. It's not about what you've lost, and it's for you to feel and you to
Mm,
grieve, and that's to be valid. And it's messy and it's complicated, and I know full well from my experience, you need to get it out there and you need to share it and you need to talk about it and you need to
mm,
honor what's coming up
mm,
inside of you. And if you at any point stuff it down or feel shameful or be, yeah, ashamed that because you think, oh, that person has been through worse or doesn't understand, you are therefore not honoring your grief, you're not honoring your body, your emotions. And I, it's like I can sit with someone and understand their grief and talk to them and hold space for them and keep that a completely separate thing to what happened to me, because you can't compare those situations. You
mm-hmm,
can't,
mm-hmm.
it's like when people like lose a pet, and I know, some people are quite mean about that, aren't they? Go, well, it's not a human,
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, loss is loss, grief is grief, trauma is
yeah,
trauma. Come
yeah.
on, and but I think we are especially bad at it
Yeah,
in
I think you're
in the
right. I think
personal.
you're right. And I think this is also part of where I really think about my clients, and I think it's so incredibly generous that they're doing their therapeutic work. And whether it's through therapy or church or in the forest, whatever, or community, however you heal and find your way to healing and processing your own pain, it better equips us to hold others, and I think there is some truth to that. For example, if somebody's in the midst of a very raw loss, somebody else's pain might really bang up against that. And so we sometimes try to honor each other, but we don't necessarily know and can't necessarily suss out where our people are at unless we ask. For example, if you're going through a pregnancy and someone's experiencing infertility, we don't know unless you check in and ask and say, hey, where are you at with this? Are you open to a conversation about this? And then we can ask. And then if there's consent, it's there. But I really hear you in that, where it's just not helpful to hold secrets or a hierarchy around pain and suffering. It really, and at the same time acknowledging that there are egregious, awful things happening in the world, and people are being violated in all sorts of ways. And again, I'm really, it's so interesting. I'm just thinking about how this is in some ways a celebratory episode, in that it's your 50th podcast. And here I am just landing a book deal around PMDD. And yet in this kind of conversation, grief and praise, as Martin Prechtel would say when he speaks about grief and praise, or celebration and suffering, that they're inseparable in a way. I often think that grief and gratitude pass through that same portal, that it's all a part of the human experience, and that it's not like we feel good today and therefore things are okay and I'm on the path. No, it's all the path. Grief and pain and suffering and joy and ecstasy and connection and beauty and celebration. It's all a big part of this very big, messy human experience, with PMDD. The internal experience for me has been very dramatically high, very dramatically low. And I don't know if you can relate to that, but the ups and downs are really dramatic.
Yeah, in my household, so we're big on like the universe, how it all started, what's life about. Oh, they're deep thinkers, my kids, right? And yeah, and my daughter and I, we have this idea that, there's some people that just go through life not particularly with the waves. They don't know what they don't know. And that's either by suppressing things down, or perhaps not looking up, not, It's sometimes, the whole ignorance is bliss could be quite appealing. And we call it the hot sauce theory. So we're like on the Nando's menu, and you have your mild chicken at the bottom, right? And obviously you get hotter and hotter sauces as you go.
I love this.
Go up. And we decided that when you take your chance on this earth, and you think, well, I'm going to have a human experience, how will this unfold for me? And they'll go, pick your sauce. And there'll be some people that go, I'm going to go for the mild. You know what I mean? I'm not going to feel amazing, but I'm not going to feel rock bottom either. I'm just going to coast through life. And then someone like me went, I'm going to go for the extra hot sauce. I want to feel everything. I want the messy chaos. Hit me with the hot sauce. And then throughout the waves of life, I'm going, what was I thinking? I want to go back to the garlic and lemon. So I think
and do you know what I love in that example? I think that's really like fun and playful and potent. And also it implies this element of choice, where folks with PMDD, and for most people, haven't had a choice. And I think as I've learned about what PMDD is and treatment modalities that work for me, it's given me back this sense of agency and choice, and how to navigate that extra spicy, like how much of the extra spicy am I going to take on this month, because I love that, but it also makes me want to be a fly on the wall in your house. So I've been thinking, can I come over to the UK? Can we do like a stop on my book tour over there? You can do the styling. We can play with styling. Maybe we can have a conversation about the realities of PMDD and what we've learned through it, and do a reading over there. My ancestry is actually English, Scottish. My name is originally French. I would love to come in person. Wouldn't that be fun?
Get over here. We'll go to Nando's. We'll get the hot sauce.
Let's go to. Really need to have like a club soda, or something else to help manage. Or what is it that helps, like yogurt?
Yeah, dairy.
Okay, so we'll temper it with dairy. But yeah, I'm here for it. I'm in, and I just think about your listeners and PMDD, and if anyone's going through the ups and downs, that it really is week by week, you don't always know what you're going to get. Like, we can start to anticipate and future proof a little bit, but just thank God for the women in my life, the menstruating folks in my life, the good men in my life to help hold this red tent on the days when I need it. You're welcome in mine. And I'm just so pleased that you've shown up, even with the honesty that it's been a trial these last couple weeks, It hasn't been easy.
I was like, oh, I could write a book just on the last 2 weeks. I really could.
Oh my God.
It's something. I was just thinking, so I was gonna ask you before we round this up, just to say about looking back, you got your book launch and everything. What's like a big takeaway that you've had? What are you feeling around that?
Yeah, there's so much, but the big thing that I'm really playing with right now as I'm really completing the manuscript, or the manuscript, let's call it that, is that I had this feeling at different points through PMDD of I have a playlist as I'm working on the book. I'm happy to share it with you. But the idea of like losing my religion, like that REM song, that's me in the corner, losing my religion, just like, is it always going to be this hard? And that moment again that you shared, that moment that you had where you thought, can I even carry on? That feeling of losing my religion. And then as I come to closure with the book, really about finding my religion, finding my faith, finding my flow, and who I am in relationship to this experience, and the post-traumatic growth, and what I'm able to offer the world as a result of what it is I've navigated, so that it's come full circle more to like a prayer. That's another one on my playlist. Thank you, Madonna. But us children of the 80s, you're going to really appreciate the playlist. But that's what come to is faith and flow, and how to find my way. That's what my book is about, how to have found my way back towards faith and flow when I really lost it for a really long period of time through the experience of puberty and arrested development, and how to find my way back into faith and flow. And it would have been a lot faster with this good research, less patriarchy, and the support of a beautiful, amazing, glorious red tent with, massage and dates, and we're doing one another's hair and massaging one another's feet. I'm borrowing the title of my book from a beautiful book called The Red Tent by Anita Diamond. If you haven't read it yet, highly recommend. They've done a show, but that's, I think, what it comes down to for me. That's not a very succinct one word answer, but if I had to just say one word, it's about regulation. But how do we get there is another question.
Love that. It's a very open question. I get that. I suppose I was just being reflective, because I was thinking when I started this podcast, and because I would have my worst techie moments when I was in Luton as well.
Of course.
And I think it just, like, it was like my partner as well, and I call him my lobster. Yeah, friends. Just the whole, he's like, no, you should celebrate, because it's a big thing to get to. Because let's be honest, you do struggle with technology, and it was so hard getting those first episodes out there. And you didn't do it to get famous, and you didn't do it for the money, and you did it because you wanted to put a voice out there, and you wanted to create a community, and you wanted to hold space. And it was really scary at first. And, I found my flow, and I know it'll come ever evolving. And I'm also just so grateful as well that, that we have this technology, and we were talking about it just before the episode. I was like, I've got this software, it does this and this and this and this. And it's so easy. And that's only been in the last few years. So, and like you said, as we continue to grow this message and build this community, it's things like that. I was like, actually, I'm really thankful for technology and software and podcasts and getting this voice out there. And
yes,
it's just, and it's given me, it's given me that, like, I created a little bit of space in this, but it's given me that as well. And I'm just, I'm so grateful.
Anna, I'm so happy to hear that. And given that this is your 50th episode, and you say you've created space for others, and that's given you the space as well, I'm just really curious, what it is that you would celebrate on this 50th episode. I'm hearing the space you've created for others, that it's offered the same to you. But I'm curious if you were just coming back to your why, as to why you started this, and what you could tell that Anna of 50 episodes ago about where you're at.
Well, I just remember a makeup appointment years and years and years ago, where maybe there were blogs, but there certainly weren't podcasts, or for, like, people like me. And I just remember I just want to say stuff. That's what I said. I just want to say stuff. I've got an opinion. I've got a view. I've got a voice. So there. That's what I wanted to say. And that has allowed me, and that in itself is just just saying it. Just saying anything, saying your truth. Yeah, that is more cathartic than anything else.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Amen.
Love it. Do you have any other little tidbits you can tell us about the book, Heather, before we go?
Well, it's going to be both playful and poignant. I'm going to pick up some of the techniques I learned along the way with our awfully hilarious books and community we've been building, is to bring in breathing room through humor and play. But I'd love to ask for all your help here. Is the books are available already for pre-order, and the more pre-orders, the more it'll help me get out into the world to tell the story and to hopefully come over to the UK with the book and share the stories and meet up to style and be on stage together. I would just love that. But yeah, the other thing about it is if there's anyone in your life that you think is suffering, please share this with them. It's not normal. Some of the pieces that we've spoken about today have unfortunately been too common with the PMDD experience, especially the suicidality, but that's not normal, and we want you to have help. So whether it comes through my book, through our conversations here, through the emergency room, through calling one of the phone lines, the PMDD project in the UK is offering great support, as is the IAPMD, that you're not alone out there. It's just what I always come back to is you're not alone. You matter.
Absolutely.
Your voice matters.
Well, we're going to put those links in the show notes, obviously, about the book. And I will always say to people, please reach out. Absolutely. Inbox is always open. Big fan of the voice notes. I will get back to you. Honestly, please don't even suffer a fraction of what we've been talking about here. Just please reach out. And as I said, please, for not for my podcast, but for everyone, please like and share and put this message out there that you really are not alone. So I would say thank you so much, Heather. It's so great to see you again. We're going to have to make this a regular occurrence, and we are definitely going to be seeing you when you do your book tour and you come to the UK. We will
Can't wait. Congrats, Anna. Number 50. Delighted.
See you at 100.
See you then.
So until next time, please remember, you are doing amazing. You are stronger than you think. Please keep going. And as always, sending all my love.